Hello, everybody. How's it going? Thanks for stopping by. This is the very first part to what I really want to become a new series on this channel, something a little bit different. I'm calling it Last Week at Apple, and if you've been a long-time subscriber, I actually I did like 2 to 3 episodes of this a very long time ago in the past, where I would basically recap everything that Apple has done in the past week, any big news, new betas that have been released, and put it all into one video to basically just expand a little bit more on it, talk a little bit more about it, and then at the very end of this, I want to interact with all of you, answer any super chats that I get, answer some regular chats as well to basically interact with all of you about the news. And I think live streaming is really fun, so I wanted to try this as a format rather than putting it in like one very nicely well put together video. This is a stream. I'm very new to this, but it's also a lot of fun to know that this message is going out live to everyone on the internet and you're all getting it at the same time. So, well, let's go ahead and jump into the first story. Okay, so first up this week, we got iOS 11.4.1, a very small beta update. We're only on beta 3, and there's not a lot happening here. We've got the whole, one change update like Apple always does after we get out of the 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 in the .1, .2s after that. We never really see that much, and that's just because we really shouldn't expect to see that much because this is near the very end of iOS 11's release cycle. We've seen more updates than I've ever seen in my entire life with iOS 11, which is a good and bad thing. It's good because Apple worked out the bugs apparently as quickly as they could. It's not great though because iOS 11 was still one of the buggiest releases ever, and iOS 12 already in beta 2 for me feels more stable than the public release version of iOS 11.4 right now, which is a really good sign, and I think that iOS 11.4.1 will be one good really last update before we see iOS 12 in the fall. The one new feature in this update is a basically toggle inside of passcode settings to either allow access or not allow access to USB accessories when your device has been locked for more than an hour. So that's the story with iOS 11.4.1. I think a day after that, we got the update that most of you were actually most excited for, iOS 12 Beta 2. I was really excited for this. I know pretty much every comment, not actually every comment, but so many on the 11.4.1 Beta 3 video was, hey, this is cool, but where's iOS 12 Beta 2? And that's obviously because iOS 12 is the big new update. That's where we're going to see all the changes, and it's always what is unquestionably the most exciting every year. I always love the summertime, just seeing new betas, basically seeing iOS updates every other week, sometimes every single week, is super exciting, and we get to go through all the changes and experience it together. There was a lot that changed in this update. I know there's a grabber on the iPad now, a lot of more generalized refinements, but no big features added, like the Siri Shortcuts app that I'm really excited to mess around with, where you can basically customize Siri to respond and do an action based on a certain verbiage or a certain phrase that you use. That's still not here. Hopefully it comes in beta 3 because that's something that myself and a lot of people are really interested to take a look at. Like, can this save Siri? Can it actually make the platform better? Or is it just going to be another very marginal upgrade year for Siri? I don't know about you guys. I'm ready for a big Siri upgrade, and still Apple has not taken it super seriously yet. They just keep hiring more Siri engineers, but I still feel like the platform is quite a bit behind Amazon Alexa and the Google Assistant as well. So that was iOS 12 Beta 2. You can get that right now through settings. Then we got a report that I'm not super excited about, that I did not want to report on, but still felt like I had to. iPhone SE 2. Not coming. According to a report from Forbes, they got their information from Elixir, who put out this render that you can see on the screen in one of these directions. It was a really good looking render. I got really excited for it. I think a lot of you guys got really excited for it, and I wanted to see this phone. I wanted to see what you're looking at right now because I think it looks incredible. I think it's very fresh. It's got a great design, and it's got a smaller notch as well, packing all of this into what would be like a 4 to 5 inch body or 4 to 5 inch screen. But it might not be happening now. If it comes out at all, it will probably be coming in September, according to Maka Takara. But at this point, I would have a hard time seeing Apple release the iPhone SE 2 on top of 3 other iPhones, the lower cost LCD model, in addition to the higher end second generation iPhone 10 and the iPhone 10 Plus. 4 iPhones from Apple in a year with very similar and competing specs feels very non-Apple-esque. I don't know if I could see Apple doing it, But there's always a chance, and I really hope we see the iPhone SE 2 for anybody that just doesn't want a big screen, doesn't have super big hands, or just wants a small screen. They want a very compact, small form factor phone. That's exactly what the iPhone SE was. In addition to it being really expensive for great specs on the inside, of course, that was back in 2016. It's 2018 now, and the iPhone SE 2 feels pretty dated at this point. So maybe we see something new in the future, but I'm still not sure because this report now comes amidst nothing else being said about the iPhone SE 2, like in retaliation of this report, in response to this report, no one said like, oh yeah, this report is BS, like new iPhone SE 2 definitely coming. It's just kind of been silent. So the last news we have for the iPhone SE 2 is the fact that it just might not be coming at all, which is really disappointing for anybody that wants that. I'm gonna go over to the next story now, which was AirPower. AirPower is a big deal. AirPower is something that Apple announced back in September of 2016 and that we are not seeing until maybe now September of 2018, which is very, very long from the release time frame that we thought, which is going to be maybe 3 to 6 months. And technically Apple never lied to us. They said, hey, like AirPower is coming. It's coming at some point in 2018. We're just not going to tell you exactly when. And right now, it's still technically 2018, but AirPower was announced in September of 2017. And right now on June 24th, 2018, well into like the 9-month time frame since Apple first announced it, we still don't have AirPower. And it's for what seems like a really simple product. In the Bloomberg article that came out to talk about the new September time frame and release date for the product, they mentioned like having to align all the coils inside of it is really hard, making sure it doesn't overheat. Also a really big engineering challenge that I guess Apple just wasn't aware of when they announced it. It's one of those weird cases where Apple really just wanted to show the world what they were working on, but apparently this product was not even close to being ready, considering 9 months later, the engineering team is still reportedly and actively working on the issues to make sure they can ship it later in 2018, probably in the September timeframe. So that's a pretty big deal. Apple doesn't normally announce things until they're very close to being ready, but we've seen with the Apple Watch that got delayed for quite some time. With HomePod, that got another delay after it was supposed to be available in December of 2017. It didn't come out until February of 2018. And AirPods back in, I think, 2016 now, they also got delayed by 2 or 3 months. They were announced alongside the iPhone 7, and then Apple didn't actually ship them until I think the beginning or middle of December of that same year, of either 2016 or 2017. So there's been a lot of Apple accessories delayed, as the Bloomberg article highlighted, and this is just another case of that, where AirPower seems like it's going to be really cool when we get it. I love the marketing material. I'm still convinced that to this day, Apple has actually like used this channel, iUpdateOS, to put like Sam's iPhone, Sam's Apple Watch. I made that bad joke back in September, and I'm gonna make it again because it's really weird to like see my name on something months into the marketing materials and it hasn't changed because AirPower is not out yet. There's one more story. I will get around to super chats and everything, so if you donated, I really appreciate that. I'm gonna read everything at the end, so of course stay tuned for that. One more story that I want to take a look at. This is huge. I was shocked to see this. I was actually out to dinner with a friend when this came out, and I'm like, I gotta go and make a video because a lot of people have been waiting on this. You know it, you love it. MacBook keyboard issues. Oh my gosh, I've been lucky. My MacBook that I'm actually using to stream right now has not had any issues. I'm so lucky because of that. However, a lot of people have had issues, and the keyboard on the MacBooks, keys would stick, keys would either repeat unexpectedly or they just wouldn't function at all. I know one of my residents, I was an RA at the university I go to, his MacBook keyboard was broken, countless other people online. Apparently, this issue, Apple says, affected a small percentage of users, but in reality, I think it affected thousands and thousands of users, which is realistic considering the MacBook purchase base. Like a ton of people, whenever they go to buy a laptop, usually go to the MacBook or MacBook Pros. Not a ton of people are buying MacBook Airs just because it hasn't been updated in such a long time. So when you have a ton of people buy those and the issue persists and Apple doesn't say anything for 8 months plus, 12 months plus, 24 months plus, there's a lot of people fed up with it. I saw cases mentioned in the class action lawsuits where consumers were being charged upwards of $750 to $800 to get their keyboards replaced on a device that already costs $1,400 to $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. So I think those class action lawsuits, as I mentioned in my video where I talked about the MacBook keyboard debacle, I think those probably pushed Apple in the right direction. I mean, when 3 class action lawsuits are filed against you as a company, that's a pretty big deal. That's something Apple's legal team cannot deny, legally, of course. And I think they said, okay, maybe we go ahead and just fix these for free rather than having to pay millions of reparations and legal fees and everything else that goes down when you have to go to court. So honestly, I'm not that well versed in the legal sector. I don't know if these class action lawsuits still happen or if they just kind of like fizzle out because Apple's fixing the issue. I don't know because I'm not a legal aficionado, so I'll have to do some more research on that before I say definitively what's going to happen. So that was the week at Apple. Let me go ahead and pull up the main image right here. That's what happened at Apple in the past week. It was a relatively quiet week. I thought it was funny how for the MacBook keyboard thing, Apple waited until like 5 p.m. on Friday to write an article about it just so it would get the least amount of media coverage possible, which like from a PR perspective, the right decision. From a moral, making sure people don't have to pay tons of money for a MacBook keyboard that it was Apple's fault that it broke. A little bit questionable. Apple's morals in general can be a little bit questionable sometimes. I wish they would just be like more open and transparent, but that's not who they are with anything. I've got a ton of reminders randomly going off. That's what the beeps are. But that was the official show. That concludes the official video, official recap for what happened with Apple in the past week. I'm gonna flip it over so I can actually read chat now and answer any super chats that I've gotten and just read your comments in general so I can see what's going on. Okay, the super chat I see right here is, what do you think of the iPhone SE2? Let me go ahead and pull that up really quickly just so we have some really cool background imagery. iPhone SE2, if it looked like this, I think it'd be absolutely incredible. I want the iPhone SE2 to look just like this because I think it looks incredible. Like, I love the smaller notch. I love the wallpaper on the phone. You can't get that. I'm sure that's just a concept image or the image that Alexa used when they were coming up with what they claim is based on a factory CAD for the iPhone SE2. As I mentioned earlier, I don't know if we're going to see it at this point. I was a strong, firm believer in it for a while. When these renders first came out, I thought for sure we're going to be seeing this iPhone SE2 this year. But now I'm just kind of sketched out by the idea of an iPhone SE2 because we're hearing it could be canceled now. So I really hope it's not canceled. I really hope that we see more on the iPhone SE2 in the future just because I think it would be a great product. And I think it's one of those products that might not make Apple's profit margins the fattest or the largest, but it may just make a lot of people happy. And that last super chat was from the Apple Jockey. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, but I forgot to give you credit for that super chat. I appreciate it a lot. We got another one right here from GP16524. Have you heard of the iPhone 10 Lite? Thank you for that donation. I really appreciate it. I have. I've seen a lot of people out of the blue talking about an iPhone 10 Lite. I saw a video from an Apple YouTuber today who had called it the iPhone 10 Lite, and I think that's just a name right now that people are coming up with because I've never ever seen it officially referred to as the iPhone 10 Lite. I think it's just a way to differentiate that cheaper LCD iPhone that we're going to get based on the rumors. So I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be, I couldn't see Apple calling our product like Lite. That sounds kind of cheap. That's not in Apple's DNA to make very high-end products sound cheap. I couldn't see Apple doing that, although a number of other companies do differentiate and separate their products because one will be like the Pro, one's the Lite, one's the mid-range. What we know about that LCD iPhone is that it's going to be really good. It's going to have some thicker bezels around it, which I've forgotten to mention in every video I've made on it so far. I just always overlook the fact that the bezels on this LCD iPhone are actually going to be a little bit thicker than on, say, the iPhone 10 or the iPhone 10 Plus, for example, which is going to be like one of those other drawbacks for this cheaper iPhone. I think the pricing we're hearing for this iPhone 10 Lite is like between $500 and $700. I can't remember the pricing exactly, but it's going to be much cheaper than the iPhone 10, but it's going to have Face ID. It's going to have a single camera on the back. It's going to have the edge-to-edge design, no Touch ID. A lot of those premium features from the higher-end iPhones will be coming down, and I think that's going to be really great. Like with a 6 to 6.1 inch screen, I'm legitimately considering like making that my full-time driver. I can't wait to test it out. I can't wait to see how good it is, just because it's going to be a really interesting phone, and I'm really excited to see what Apple does with it in the future. Let me head back over to chat just so I can see what's happening again. Apple should have named AirPower or their chargers Apple Juice. That would have been pretty clever. I would have enjoyed that naming convention. AirPower, already mentioned that, probably coming in September now, unless Apple delays it even further, which wouldn't be that big of a shock. What are the 2018 iPhone's prices? I think the lower end LCD model is going to be between 500 and 700, or maybe 500 and 600. I can't remember. I know the iPhone 10 second generation version is going to be reportedly $899, and then the huge 5.5 or 6.5 inch screened OLED iPhone 10 Plus is reportedly going to be $999. So you'll be getting a better phone than the iPhone 10 in 2018 for $100 less than you could buy what will be the inferior or worse off iPhone 10 in 2000 or from 2017. So the prices on the iPhones in 2018 should actually get more affordable, which is always a really good thing to hear. That's strictly based off of rumors right now and what analysts are predicting. So Apple could totally do something different if they wanted to. However, for right now, we are hearing that the iPhones in general are going to be cheaper, and I think my friend Drew from Telos of Tech has said he'll believe it when he sees it, just because anyone can suggest a rumor or analyze anything, but Apple traditionally goes higher, and when estimating Apple prices, I always shoot a little bit higher than what I think it might actually be, just because Apple loves to charge that premium price for their products. I think they're better. You could debate that all day with somebody who likes Android versus iPhone, but everybody's got their own personal preference, and it's never my job, at least on this channel, to tell you that Apple is the best or that you should always go with Apple. Just because I prefer it, like, people can use whatever they want, and I think that's totally cool and totally fine. I'm thinking Face ID iPad Pro would be $750. What do you think? That's a pretty good price, honestly. $750 for the iPad Pro. It sounds pretty good to me, just because I think that's going to be... Actually, let me make my face a little bit bigger just so you can see me better. Can I do that? Is that a feature? Yeah, I can. Okay, let me stretch myself out. There we go. Okay, now you can probably see me a lot easier if you're in a smaller screen. So, I think $750 for the Face ID enabled iPad is going to be a really fair price, just because Face ID enabled iPad Pro should be incredible. I cannot wait to see it. I want Apple to release it. Initially, they were rumored to release it in June of 2018, and now we're hearing like the September timeframe. Honestly, it's going to be a crazy September. I don't even want to begin to think about how much money my bank account is going to go down by then, just because 3 new iPhones, an iPad Pro, maybe new Macs. I got to work pretty hard in these summer months to make some money before then, or find some really great sponsors, because it's going to be really expensive, and that's just the price of covering Apple on the internet. It'd be a lot more easy if like they sent me things, but that's another question I get a lot. Like, does Apple send you free stuff? No. Apple has... They've only acknowledged my existence one time in 5 years on YouTube, and that was after I reached out to them in like 2014. And they never replied to any of my calls or my texts. Well, I don't text them, but my emails always be like, "Hey, I could use some more information or context on this story I'm working on." Just crickets. They aren't part of the iUpdate OS crew just yet. Later this year. It's coming later this year in 2018, the Face ID iPad Pro. See if there's any other good questions in here that I've missed. What do you think the naming scheme will be for next year's iPhones? I don't think it's going to be iPhone 10 Lite for the cheap model. I could see Apple just saying, maybe putting like a squared next to the X, which would be kind of weird. And then like it's going to be, is Apple going to keep the X as in the Roman numeral X? That would be iPhone 10 version 2. Or are they going to do XI for like, or IX for 11? I'm not sure yet. I could see them doing iPhone 10 Plus, second gen iPhone 10, and then like iPhone, just iPhone maybe? I'm not sure. I have no idea how Apple's going to name these phones. I have no idea how they will differentiate them exclusively by name, because I don't know how anyone could do that, because their naming scheme is kind of messed up right now. With the iPhone 10, you don't really, like, will they jump to iPhone 11? Will it be Roman numerals still? Is it going to be actual numbers? What are we going to get an iPhone 8s for that lower end model, even though it's so different? Like, just so many questions I have for Apple, so much confusion regarding the iPhone naming scheme. I don't know, and I think that's why you see my channel saying iPhone 10 Plus, second generation iPhone 10 and LCD iPhone. I think Everything Apple Pro has been calling it iPhone 9 and iPhone 11. I know I've seen 11 somewhere on his channel. Zone of Tech is who I mentioned earlier. I think he's calling it the iPhone 10 Lite. Nobody really knows, and everybody's just kind of making up their own stuff. I've just been trying to keep mine as like narrowed and focused as possible on like second gen iPhone 10, iPhone 10 Plus, and LCD iPhone. That's the best way that I found to differentiate it so far. We've got another super chat right here that I want to read from Luke's. How did you get your IRL wallpaper done? I assume you're talking about the stuff behind me. I have gotten so many questions over the years, a ridiculous amount of questions about this, so I should finally just address it. So, I am in the very first steps conceptualizing a business around these things on the wall behind me, like app icon stickers for your wall. Here's the big problem with that business idea. I don't own the rights. Let me scoot over. I don't own the rights to anything on this wall behind me except the iUpdateOS gear that I have a license for. So I can't legally just start printing these and selling these without getting a lawsuit from 1Password, Workflow, which Apple owns, so their lawyers would destroy me. And like, it's not about the fact that I could or could not get away with it legally. I just don't, it's not fair to use somebody else's image that I don't use. Like, otherwise, if we had no copyright laws, that'd be a bad idea, but I would have sold them a very long time ago. So I am conceptualizing, working on a business model with these in mind, like selling these for, I have no idea on the pricing, but basically just selling these so you could buy them, you could make your wall look really cool like this. Fun fact though, the way I did this is I printed each and every single one of these out on normal 8 by 11 or 8.5 by 11 printer paper. And I printed them in full color, in like the highest quality possible, and I literally took scissors and cut out each one of these around all the edges by hand to get it to look like this. As you can see, there's a lot, and there's a lot on this side. There's even more. Let me show you something up above me. So there's even more up here that I never show you, and you can see my microphone. So I had to print out all those by hand, and it took a long time, and I definitely wouldn't want to do it again by hand. So I would make them much more premium now. Like, I would never sell things that were cut out by hand, printed on printer paper. They would be printed on like premium decal paper, some like vinylish feel to it, super premium, like high quality, can peel off the wall without taking anything off, just because I think that's really important, and I would never sell a product with my name attached to it that I actually didn't believe in or didn't think was cool. So that's the story of the wallpapers. Hopefully that answers the question for anybody that has asked. I've never addressed it before now, but something is potentially in the works if I could get around licensing all of these images from different companies in the future. That's just a really big product, and I don't know if that's the best move for me right now. Like, I'd have to just sit down for like days and focus on that project. So we'll see. Luke's, thank you for the donation. Really appreciate that. Let's see what other questions we have here. When are the new Apple Watches coming? Another fantastic question. I think that they're going to be coming in September. We haven't heard an official release time frame just yet, but they're going to be pretty cool. We're hearing, I think, a 15% larger screen than what we have on the Apple Watch right now. And I've never had an issue with the screen size on the 42mm Apple Watch, but if Apple's going to give us more screen for potentially the same price with even slimmer bezels on the Apple Watch and maybe a refreshed design, can't complain about that. That is obviously very, very exciting. And reportedly, Bloomberg says that the bands for this current version, this is actually a knockoff Nike band I got from Amazon, these are supposedly going to work with the brand new watch design with the bigger screen. So that's going to be a crazy good deal right there. You can get a new watch and all of your old bands are going to continue to work, which is absolutely fantastic. Very, very, very happy to see that Apple is working to make the bands available on all Apple Watches, because that would be a big point of contention if Apple released new Apple Watches and suddenly your 15 bands didn't work or you had to buy all new bands. People would be really upset, especially because these aren't like universal watch bands. You can't use them on Android watches and normal nice watches or Fossil watches. These are only for the Apple Watch, so they would just basically be rendered useless if a new Apple Watch came out and you couldn't use any of your existing bands. Let's see what else we've got going on in chat. iMac 21.5 inch and iPad or MacBook Pro 15 for high school. I would say MacBook Pro 15 inch for high school, because as much as I love my iMac as it sits behind me, and as much as I love an iPad, I think portability, if you can only pick one, I'm lucky enough to have a MacBook and an iMac and an iPad. If I could only pick one though, out of all three of those devices, I would pick my MacBook hands down, because you can do everything you can do on an iMac on a MacBook, and you can do everything you can do on an iPad almost on a MacBook. You can draw on the iPad, and that's pretty cool if you get one with Apple Pencil support, and I love the iMac. Like, having this larger screen real estate, I would never want to go back to editing on a MacBook if I had an iMac. But if you can only pick one, absolutely I would recommend going with the 15-inch MacBook Pro. Hopefully your keyboard doesn't break, but hey, if it does, Apple will fix it for free now, which is very exciting. When will the iOS 12 beta come out? Also will win the new iPad. I already mentioned the little new iPad. The new iPad a little bit. It should be probably coming out in September, October, or November. I think Apple's going to have to do 2 events in the fall, just because there's too much stuff that they have to announce to only do one event. There's no way they could fit all this into a 2-hour keynote in September with 3 new iPhones, new Macs, and new iPads, and a new Apple Watch, and maybe an Apple TV, and new AirPods, and AirPower. Like, that's a 3 to 4 hour event just to talk about all that stuff. And I have a very strong belief or feeling this year that Apple is going to do one event in September for sure, and then likely another in October or November. Probably September and October are the most likely dates. The iOS 12 public beta is probably going to come out pretty soon. Pretty soon, as in this week, I would venture to say, unless they wait till iOS 12 Beta 3 for some reason, but it's totally safe to use at this point. You could try to find a developer profile somewhere on the internet, even though I wouldn't strongly encourage you to do that. However, public beta, if you want to do it safely, securely, for free, pretty much no risk. You can just wait a week or 2 weeks. Apple has not given anyone a release date just yet, but it is hopefully coming very soon in the future, because I know a lot of you definitely want to get on that public beta soon. Do I need an iPad for high school 8th grade? I don't know. iPads are cool. I think I got my first I remember I bought my first my iPad 2 in 2nd grade, and I was following rumors for that. I really wish I would have, or not 2nd grade, 7th grade. I could barely write or speak in 2nd grade. In 7th grade, I got my first iPad, so I think you'd like it a lot. I mean, honestly, going for that $329 iPad and the Apple Pencil would run you, I think, with an education discount, like $415-ish, $450 without the education discount. And I know that's a lot of money. I totally feel you. I remember back when I was in 7th grade, anything over like $100 was like insanely expensive to me. But iPads are really good. They're going to last a long time, and I think they're really great. I don't know your situation, so I can't just tell you, oh yeah, absolutely get it, carte blanche, or no, definitely don't get it. But if you want to experiment with drawing, or if you just want a really good device for YouTube to watch iUpdateOS, or Netflix or anything else, really great device for media consumption if you don't already have a MacBook. Why is the 6.1-inch iPhone called cheap iPhone X if it's going to cost $600 to $700? Great question. Everyone's just sort of framed it that way, and I don't know why. I guess it's just because in a year, tech journalists have already become like, all right, $1,000 for the iPhone is the gold standard. So when we say $600 or $700, we're we're insinuating that that is cheap, or that is inexpensive, or that is low cost, even though when you really sit down and think about it, $600 isn't low cost at all, is it? Like, you can buy I think the OnePlus 6 for around $600 or $700, and even that isn't considered low cost anymore. I would say that low cost for a phone is $300 or $400, but I don't know. Apple's not going to do that for the iPhone unless they release the iPhone SE2, in which case I would say they'll probably release it for $400 or $500. Now, $500 for a smartphone is where you'd start to get on that inexpensive slope territory. $400 I would say is objectively inexpensive for a smartphone for everything it can do. $400 for a device that can send email, connect to the internet, make phone calls, send text messages, watch YouTube. I think that's a pretty good deal. However, Apple's going for that they are basically redefining the high-end market right now and showing any company that if they make a phone that's good enough, that enough people will buy, they can do that. Like, they can charge $1,000 for a phone. If you would have charged $1,000 for a cell phone in 2010, I don't think anyone would have bought it. And I was just looking at stats for the first iPhone the other day, and it looks like you could buy that for, I want to say between $400 and $600, maybe right at the middle at $500. And I remember hearing $500 for a phone, and I remember that so many people in my family would be like, why would I want email in my pocket? Why would I want to go on the internet in my pocket? I have my computer at home. It would be a waste to have that in my pocket. Like, I don't need that. It's kind of that cognitive dissonance. Like, I don't need that because it's too expensive. I'm going to be happy with what I have. And what do you know? The people that hated smartphones years ago are now on their smartphones constantly, and they love them, and they couldn't imagine a world where they didn't have their phone on their bodies at all times. So times change, and I don't know why. I don't know why people are framing. Maybe I should stop framing the $600 or $700 LCD iPhone as cheap or inexpensive, when really that's not cheap or inexpensive at all. When's the new channel name coming out? I previewed this on a live stream with Telos of Tech. I think I'm gonna change the channel name. And I haven't officially, I guess this would be like the first official announcement. And I don't want to reveal the name just yet because I'm actually torn between two names right now. I'm torn between what is basically a simpler version of iUpdateOS. And the reason I'm changing my name, I'll probably make a separate video about this when I rebrand my website and Twitter and YouTube and everything that I do on the internet right now. Because every single time I talk to someone about my YouTube channel, not like I bring it up, but somebody's like, where do you work at, or what do you do as a hobby? I'll be like, oh, I'm a YouTuber, I do videos on the internet. They go, okay, what's your channel? And I have to go, well, it's like update with iOS around it, or actually it's like iOS with update in the middle, but in the middle of the I. So I'm going to change it to something simpler. So that it's more memorable, more easy, more unified. It is going to have less syllables than iUpdateOS for sure. That's a must, and it's going to be coming soon. I'm going to do something just simpler, something very, like, technically, I've already revealed the main name that I'm thinking in like very overt ways. I just haven't actually said that I'm going to change it to that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know when it's going to happen. I have to work on all the branding and all the new text and all the logos and making a new logo. And I don't think I'm a graphic designer. So there's a lot that goes into a rebrand, and I'm definitely dragging my feet on it just because that's a huge change. And we'll have to see when it's going to happen, but it is going to happen in the future. And I do see a channel name changing, content not going to change at all. Like, I'm not going to suddenly just switch only to Android updates. Still going to be very focused on Apple and iOS, just because expanding outside of that is hard for me, just because my true passion and love lies with talking about Apple and their mission and the products that they create. What will be the vertical and horizontal height of the budget model? I don't have those stats off the top of my head. I don't know. I know the screen diagonally is going to be between 6 to 6.1 inches, and it will be, what am I trying to say, edge to edge, nearly, with some bezel. So it'll go diagonally from the bottom left corner to the top right corner, which will be pretty cool. A lot of people are saying iUpdate in the chat. That is a name that I have considered. We will see what happens. I don't see any more questions right now. Do we wrap it up? Okay, this is a good Samsung Gear S4 four thoughts. I'll answer some of these really quickly. I don't follow Samsung that closely, but I think they're cool company. You know, they do some stuff. I've got an Galaxy S9 sitting over there. When is iOS 12 public beta coming out? I talked about that for a second earlier, and I don't exactly know yet. I just know that it's coming probably within the next 2 weeks, and it'll be free, and it's there's not a lot of risk involved. It's coming from Apple servers, so you'll be totally safe, and iOS 12 is great. Would you ever work for Apple? Great question. This is a question I get a lot from like friends or family, more so than anybody else, just because it's like, oh, you're doing YouTube, but like you probably don't make enough money to support yourself. So like, what are you gonna do when you graduate college? Actually, I need a drink of water. I'm feeling real dry mouthy right now. Very tasty, very tasty. I would absolutely work for Apple if they reached out. If Apple just contacted me and like acknowledged my existence at all, I would just be so excited. Because it's definitely weird to spend 5 years of your life amassing an audience of 100,000 people about a company, and they've still never once been like, hey, you'd probably sell products for us without us asking. Like, that's kind of cool. Or like, you generate lots of hype for our products. Like, thank you, we appreciate that. Or just like, hey, we have an event that will be centered around your channel, iOS 12. Do you want to come? They've never reached out to me, and I know that they probably just don't know who I am or don't care because I'm so small. Like, I don't want to sound ungrateful for 100,000, but compared to Unbox Therapy with 11 million, I think now, or Jonathan Morrison with like 3 million, Marquez with 5 or 6 million, I am a blip on this giant map of tech YouTubers. And I can't wait to get bigger in the future so that other companies notice and are like, hey, you're kind of an okay channel. Do you want to come check out our product early, or do you want to get this exclusive hands-on? That'd be incredible. But going back to the question, would you ever work for Apple? Yes. If Apple ever reached out and was like, hey, we're making some big change to iOS, we want you to consult for us. We want you to tell you what you think people will like, what you like. Hey, we've got a new video campaign for the iPhone X. We want you to be the creative director for this. We want you to shoot this. We want you to sell iPhones through this way, through conveying this emotion of love or companion. I don't know. If Apple ever reached out to me for any project, there's no way I could say no. Absolutely. I mean, if Samsung reached out, if any company that would be willing to pay me for my creative expertise or work, I don't think I could ever say no to that. However, becoming a full-time employee for Apple, especially developing products like iOS 12 or the iPhone, would be the biggest topic of contention ever, because obviously if I worked at Apple developing iOS 12, I probably also couldn't make YouTube videos about iOS 12 or Apple because I would have that knowledge in my head, and I doubt that Apple would say, oh yeah, you're totally cool to talk about everything else but what you work on every day at our company. I don't think Apple would ever allow me to continue to do YouTube while being a full-time employee for their company. Now, contracting and working for them is a little bit different, but there's no way if I was like a full-time iOS 12 engineer, not that I know anything about code or development, or if I was just on the consulting team full-time, I don't think Apple would allow me to have this channel. And I don't know, I'd maybe try it for a month or two. Who knows? Like, working for what is arguably the wealthiest company in the world, pretty big opportunity, and one that I'm not sure I could ever pass up. This is also another question that I see all the time. If this will be the last one for the stream. If Steve Jobs was alive right now, do you think Apple would be the same as it is now? And my answer to that is absolutely not. Absolutely not. Apple would not be the same, because Steve Jobs had a very different way of doing, I think, everything at the company than Tim Cook does. I can't say if it would be better or worse because Steve Jobs isn't alive, and I can't say, yeah, absolutely, he was a visionary. He would have. I mean, things change, time change, innovation changes. I couldn't tell you whether or not Apple would be better off right now under Steve Jobs or Tim Cook. I will say, as far as a keynote goes, as far as being on stage, Steve Jobs, much better presenter than Tim Cook. Very just kind of electrified when he spoke. You could see it in his eyes, his passion, what he loved, what he didn't love. You could see the hours that went into designing these products that he was so happy to talk about it and to unveil things. And I see that a lot in contemporaries that work with Steve Jobs, like Craig Federighi and Phil Schiller. When they talk about these products, when they show off new features, they don't say, oh yeah, we spent 40 hours just coming up with this idea. They just kind of show you what it is, and they lead you to believe that, yeah, like we spent a lot of time on this and we really, really like this project. And they show you on stage, both amazing presenters. Eddy Cue also pretty good at presenting, but Tim Cook, he's gotten a lot better. Like, he's much more comfortable now on stage than he was in the past, but he's still, I love him to death. Like, I love the man to death. His ideals, his morals, his fundamentals, I love him as the leader of Apple. I think he does such a good job at leading this company. Like, if I could sit down with him and just rack his brain about Apple and the environment and why he cares and his upbringing, and I would die for that interview. I would love to interview him and really just sit down and talk about Apple from my perspective as somebody who covers the company. However, when it gets to getting excited about a product and being on stage, Tim Cook is just very matter of fact, very like dad jokey. These are kind of our stats. And he wasn't as exciting to watch as Steve Jobs. Now, of course, that comes with time as we continue to see Apple get older and older, and Tim Cook grows and grows, and everybody at Apple changes over time. Who knows? Maybe Tim Cook will go down as the greatest Apple presenter of all time. Right now, he's just the very public face. Excellent interviewer. He never slips up on interviews. He never says something inappropriate or wrong or questionable. He's incredible. I watched, I think, an NBC or CNBC interview with him the other day, and he's very, when he doesn't want to give you an answer, he'll just be like, I'm not going to talk about that. And when he does, he ties it into a humanity or his love for something. And just like watching him interview, he's super, super good from an investor standpoint for who you want leading nearly $1 trillion company. He's really good at that. But when it comes to getting excited about a product, I would definitely leave that to Phil Schiller and Eddy Cue and Craig Federighi. They do a really good job. All right. No more super chats, so we are going to wrap it up for now. I want to thank everybody for tuning into this. Hopefully it was fun. If you want to see more of these, let me know down below in the comment section of this video after it's live on YouTube or in the chat right now. This is fun. It's a little bit different. Maybe we do this every Sunday. Maybe nobody really cares, and this is the only time we do it. Or let me know if you just want to see more live streams in general. They're fun. They're a more off-the-cuff way for me to talk about Apple and to think, rather than just, having everything very well edited, lots of B-roll on screen, just me talking to you guys, which is really fun. I also want to just thank you publicly now for 100,000 subscribers. Huge milestone. Really appreciate it. I think I'm working on a video for it. I've got a lot of conceptualized ideas of this 100K video that I want to do that really just like tells the story of this channel and me and make it pretty personal. I want to be more personal on this channel rather than just the guy that talks about Apple. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm not sure if it's going to come ever, or if I start working on it, I don't like it, or if it's going to come out like next week, because I do want to do something special for 100K. I do really appreciate it, and I can't wait to get the play button at some point in the future. That's just going to be absolutely crazy. So of course I'll keep you updated on that, and just wanted to give a really big thank you to everybody who subscribed. You've changed my life. I said this on Twitter the other day. My life would not be the same without YouTube, and it's been an incredible journey, and I can't wait to see what happens in the future. It's been really, really fun. All right, before I get too sappy and emotional and start bursting out some tears, I'm gonna wrap